Hello and welcome to another video in Finding Freedom. So I'm doing this from my car because I got other stuff to do, but I wanted to go ahead and record this and get this out hopefully today. I think today is the 2nd of June because I think it's important. And I think people need to understand vernacular and everything else because, as Spider-Man's uncle once said, with great power comes great responsibility. So let's get into the title of this whole thing, which is why magic is dangerous in the wrong hands. Now, when I say magic, what am I talking about? Some people may think Harry Potter, some people may think The Immortal Life of Nicholas Flamel, watching The Witcher, Merlin, etc. But if you look at magic, such as what Thor described in Avengers, it's about like physics, technology, getting to peek behind the curtain, so on and so forth. Ideally, information and knowledge, right? Which you hear Ty Lopez talk about all the time. Knowledge, right? But knowledge does not turn into wisdom, and knowledge cannot turn into wisdom unless it's applied and passed down, and it remains successful, giving the person that passed it down wisdom. So what can be used for good can be used for bad to cause harm, right? There's yin and yang to everything. And there's, people out there that think everything is a joke until it becomes real. And then when it becomes real, it's no longer funny. And they're like, oh, I was just playing. So what? It's in the past. So what? This, that, and the third, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And they don't know what they're doing. And then all of a sudden they either pretend and catch amnesia because they're underneath, i.e. a spell, or, whatever the case may be. Now, when it comes to magic, if you ever studied magic, like David Blaine, David Copperfield, etc., and, you are interested in the intelligence community, there's a gentleman named Wayne Houchin, and he talks about how the government used to hire magicians. And if you ever go to the CIA museum, you'll see a lot of stuff, if you are a magician, in the CIA museum because, well, we're really good at certain things, and deception is one of them. However, with deception comes a fine line that can be crossed, right? When you know deception, right, and you have a big budget and you know how to get away with certain things and you trust people not to, well, 9 times out of 10 somebody's going to try and do something. So there's always going to need people on that line, or like a big brother and sister, to watch over the other little ones, right? Because some people will go ahead and use the deception for manipulation. They don't care what happens. They're going to cause harm or do something bad because they're doing something for themselves. They're trying to get you to do something like a chess piece on a board and don't care if they sacrifice you, right? Whereas influence, they trying to get you to do something to become better, try to become stronger, try to become smarter, whatever. Now, that's the fine line, right? So you have medical doctors that understand psychology. In magic, this is called and referred to as mentalism, right? The studying of human behavior, psychology, sociology. How does the brain work? What do alpha, beta, gamma waves do? How can we manipulate that with audio? How can we apply physics and long-range weapons, right? So on and so forth, or long-range acoustic weapons, or direct energy weapons. And we could go ahead and, because the law is a precise endeavor, talk about how they change the name of certain things so that if they ever get mentioned in a courtroom, people can, well, say, I don't know, or that's not it, etc. It's like going to a undercover police officer, a cop, right? Someone who used to work the beat and then became a undercover cop. And you ask them, because you caught on to them, are they a cop, right? Or are they police? They can answer truthfully or not, but they don't know if you're recording anything or not. So they either have a couple choices. They can say yes, no, or leave. And that's normally the strategy, because if they get caught lying, well, then the whole case gets lost. Now, when it comes to the 3-letter agencies, ATF, FBI, so on and so forth, etc., the law is a precise endeavor, meaning that if you ask them, are you part of an intelligence agency? Are you part of, are you an undercover, asset? Are you a confidential informant, if you start shotgunning those things off, there's only a handful of things that they could say before the whole case gets blown. How do I know this? Well, because when I was in the military, I got to not only peek behind the curtain, but I got to go to a school and I got to assist when it came to training, to train three-letter agencies and their vernacular and everything else, which is why I'm so adamant about explaining certain things to people who think they're getting away with something when they're not. So remember, deception can be used for manipulation, which is normally what's in it for me, right? You know, if there's insurance fraud, oh, well, they're going to leverage the degree. So they could go ahead and drug you in the ambulance or drug you when you get to the hospital, put you in front of a doctor. The doctor says they don't know what's going on. And they get to cash in on your insurance because they can IVC you, right? Hold you against your will. You're violating human will and rights. And you can do that, obviously, if the doctor feels it's unsafe for you to leave. But then what constitutes that? Because 9 times out of 10, IVC is you're a harm to others or to yourself. And if you're neither one of those, then they're in violation of civil and human rights, which is an issue. And they don't want a lawsuit when it comes to that, because human rights is global, so on and so forth, which means it now becomes an international affair as well as domestic if it ever gets released into the public domain, which most people have released that information into the public domain, and light has been shown or shined upon certain things. If they are, you know, nefarious, then they're going to try to employ their buddies, etc. If they have a lot of money, they'll do that as well, and then they will utilize magic, physics, technology, everything else. Bug your car, put speakers in there, maybe put pinhole cameras, maybe put smaller cameras that you hear adjusting to make sure it has proper positioning on you, maybe do other stuff, and then of course record you and put you under surveillance, and then say, see, your honor, this is what he does in his private, this is why we did this, and this, not understanding because, well, the judge isn't an expert on everything. However, if you inform the judge or judges and jury, so on and so forth, on what can be done, such as sound can be transferred utilizing light. When I was in high school, we played a prank on a friend of ours. He was in an empty room. We shined a laser into the room, and we started speaking through a microphone, and he thought that there was voices coming from the room, or he was hearing voices. That's physics, but if not described to you or understood or mentioned to you, then it would be indistinguishable from magic, which is what Thor said in Avengers. So let's move on to point 2. Right? Sharing is not always caring, right? Some people think it's interesting to go ahead and bug somebody, give them a cavity search or whatever. And if you don't know what a cavity search is, they put a sophisticated device that goes into your mouth like a crown or a implant, etc. And that can kind of, one, pinpoint your position, tap into your central nervous system to make sure it's you. And then, well, if they have access to your phone already, or your car has Wi-Fi, whatever the case, they can not only track you, but know when those things are all together in the same area to pull whatever it is that they want off, to pull it off, right? And they can also take that information and share it with their little buddies. So if they're a part of a group, if they're part of a fraternity, if they're part of, you know, an association, whatever, right? Most of you heard of different communities, groups, etc. Some people talk about Freemasons, some people talk about magic groups, some people talk about gangs and everything like that. But one of the things that they don't understand is that my understanding and their understanding are two different things. See, they're utilizing old technology, and I'll mention this in another video, but it's old technology because if you go and speak to gang members, mafia members, cartel members, etc., they know about the cavity search. They know about the technology. They know about it already. So when they put it into play, because they have nothing else better to do with their time, life, energy, and attention, and they just want to mess with somebody or individually target them and then play dumb and catch amnesia, they'll utilize these tools and tactics without knowing and understanding that these are old. Remember, technology and science upgrades every 3, 6, and 9 months, right? So if technology is improving every 3 to 6 to 9 months, within the span of 5 to 6 years, your technology is old. Within a decade, it's extremely old. Within 2 decades, it is a grandpa. Within 3, 4 decades, it's extremely old, right? The cavity search idea came from something where I guess the Russians sent over a presidential seal to the United States, and it had a similar device, similar material inside that was able to record and broadcast everything that was coming from inside of the Oval Office. Once they found that technology, they utilized it and did cavity searches for civilians, pedestrians that they were investigating, etc. And they would hire dentists to work together, doctors to work together. Everybody would be in on it, and people would get all this information. Then they would play this game like this person was a mind reader, or they were a telepath, or whatever the case may be, when in actuality they were just using science and technology and physics, so on and so forth. But then, of course, the people that learned all the tactics and learned certain things ended up using it for bad reasons, and then they didn't know why, right? Because they didn't ask any questions, nor did they care to understand. They got scared and then quickly cried wolf when there was no wolf, right? Then they ended up, obviously, those people that end up doing that normally end up taking somebody, either turning them into a monster, or they end up becoming a wolf because that's what their only option, right? Those are the only two options, because everybody else has either been intimidated, playing dumb. They've been shown that laws, rules, torts, and everything else do not exist. It only exists for certain people. You need to have things on paper, because God forbid something's not on paper. Even if it is, they will still violate it or question it, which is perfectly fine if they question it. At least it's down on paper. But even if it is on paper, they can quickly overlook it, as long as, well, everybody's on the same page, which is coercive behavior. And that falls underneath, I guess, color of law. I think that's 18 USC subsection 241 and 242, and so on and so forth. So even if you are assisting somebody, you're an accomplice, and you normally suffer similar punishments. So let's continue. Point 3. Some only want to do and cause harm. That's what people don't understand. They could be the nicest person in the world if they have a persona online, if they have a persona on stage as an actor, whatever the case. Psychologically, the brain cannot tell the difference between someone spending time with you in person or on video. This is a true false fallacy, but it happens every single time. Have you ever met someone you looked up to, met them in person, and then all of a sudden there is a disconnect from what they portrayed online or in the movie or in the television show or whatever, and what you see in person, right? What you meet in person. And then people have different vernacular, right? Jargon, Harry Potter language, in order to describe or label people. If you're in the medical field, you can say someone is bipolar, or, ADHD or something else. And it's not to make fun of them, so on and so forth, but it's the invisible. And if you study the medical books, the evidence that they would look for is normally within the files, because you can't give somebody a bipolar disorder in 24 or 48 hours, but you can make a comment, right? Especially if they're stable afterwards, which means they're in violation of their own credentials and teaching and oath, which means they were already up to no good from the get-go, and they just wanted to milk for funds, which is, well, nefarious or bad or breaking the law or a violation against 18 USC and a couple other things. If they're tapping your phone because of whatever, then that's a violation of 47 USC, right? But if they prove that it doesn't matter and none of those laws exist, then you should be able to do it too, right? You should be able to become the monster and the wolf just like them, so that you can have an opportunity to fight back and give them what they want, whether that's to blackmail you, to entrap you, to incriminate you falsely, just to prove a point, to avoid a lawsuit and being proven wrong, right? One of the things that they've proven was that a lot of people who study psychology, especially psychiatrists that go and get obsessed over things. There was one that was studying killers and psychopaths, and they took brain scans from all of them. And long story short, when they looked at everything, the doctor that conducted the study ended up being the most psychopathic out of all of them, right? And you have to be somewhat psychopathic to cut into somebody, to diagnose, to play scientist with the invisible, the human brain, to use the human brain and body like a big chemistry project, right? And then, of course, you don't want to be wrong. And then, of course, you have to ask your friends to delay the time clock even more. So instead of a year, 2 years, or 3 years, it goes on for 5, 6, 7 years, right? Whatever the case. Maybe they have a judge in their pocket, a senator, a congressman, a mayor, a governor, right? That's allowing all this to happen. So remember, some only want to do harm. Some want to create slaves with this type of technology, right? They want to drive people around like an avatar. If you're tapped into someone's central nervous system, you can get them to do a lot of things based upon your will, right? Because you can control their body. The nervous system sends signals to the muscles, the body, the brain, and everything else in order to do so. And you could research this yourself. Right? If you ever seen The Sorcerer's Apprentice, the gentleman that was the apprentice was heavily into physics, engineering, etc., right? And it was indistinguishable from magic, right? Last point that I want to make on this one is that sharing spelling, forcing your way in through the door, causes issues, not peace nor happiness. Do you want the golden rule to apply to your ass? Right? If so, it might be death. Right? If you were playing dumb, didn't know that people were trying to get away with murder, playing scientist, understanding their side effects, but you already signed off on it, and now you're playing really stupid after years of everything coming out, knowing that these people are intentionally killing people. Or should I say murdering people. Killing is in self-defense, manslaughter, etc. Whereas murder is planned, orchestrated, coerced. There's more than one individual or time took place in order to understand as much information as possible so you could orchestrate and develop a plan to take that individual out or to individually target them while staying in everybody's good graces, as they say, right? So if you want the golden rule to apply, well, then do unto others as you shall have them do unto you. So should all the doctors, nurses, first responders, law enforcement, investigators, intelligence people, etc., that were in on it, including pedestrians and civilians that wanted to play a game, want the golden rule to apply to them, since they were trying to do the very thing to an individual or a group of individuals, and they thought it was funny. It's not funny when it hits your doorstep. Remember, during the time of, Corona, COVID, whatever it is, this is for educational purposes, but they magically found a cure to a mysterious thing in less than 2 years, but they can't find cures to anything else, which means they're holding out because of profiteering, which is illegal all over the place, no matter what country you're in. So think about it. If somebody was able to cure you, if they were able to heal you, and they just choose not to because they want to line their pockets, are they playing with magic, all right, in order to make more money and using deception to manipulate you in order to put more money in their pocket? Because they're not influencing you. If they were influencing you, they would do their job and you would get better, yes? You would be healed, yes? Right? You wouldn't have heart disease. You wouldn't have cancer. You wouldn't have other things. Yes? So ask yourself that question before you try to be judge, jury, and executioner in your little scheme, your idea, etc. Because there's rules to everything. And if you ever watched the TV show Hustle on BBC, even Mickey Bricks dictates that there's rules. There was an episode where Albert Stroller and Ashley Morgan ended up conning an innocent person and that owned a small business, and Mickey tells them, he goes, there are rules, etc. It brings bad luck, all this other stuff, etc. Why did you do it? Oh, well, we thought this, that, and the third, blah, 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 blah. And then Mickey had to come in and save the day and make amends because they were going to shut down the business and the guy was going to give up, etc., so on and so forth. They did a great job screwing over somebody that was actually innocent, right? It's like sneaking off and telling somebody there's a national emergency, etc. So now we got to enact Title 50 on these group of individuals and Title 10 and so on and so forth. And they destroy an innocent person, and now nobody wants to get caught with their hand in the honey jar. Sorry, not honey pot. I mean cookie jar, as they say, right? Because they hired somebody to play what's known as the badger, right? They got a prostitute, an escort, so on and so forth, a porn star, to pretend to be something else, to hook up with an individual to get closer to them, right? The honey trap, right? In the con world in the UK, it's called playing the badger, working the badger. Sometimes they do this with law enforcement or anybody who has a badge, right? So they could get information and or incriminate them, right? So if you are a person with a badge and this beautiful, attractive woman is now sleeping with you and you're in a position of authority, that's otherwise known as a honeypot or a honey badger, right? They joke about the honey badger, which is an actual animal, but this type of lingo, this Harry Potter language, this jargon, this vernacular, the rhetoric that I'm using in this video is very true, right? The honey badger could take a beating, right? I met a lady that was actually in one of these positions. I think her name was Leslie, and she had scars like this one on the back of my hand, on her back, and she tried to tell me that it was from liposuction. Well, it wasn't from liposuction. I found out later that she was somebody that was, you know, playing the honeypot, honey trap, honey badger role, and on one of her things somebody was putting out cigars or something on her back, which was very frustrating and difficult to hear. But she already got psychologically groomed, and she enjoyed the money so much she didn't mind putting up with a lot of stuff. Ironically, she worked for Atrium Health as a nurse, I guess, afterwards. But anyways, see exactly what money gets people to do and how far people are willing to go in order to maintain power and control, and then ask yourself, what side do you sit on when it comes to believing sharing is caring, right? Believing that everything is, you know, is what it is, that the laws exist, right? One of the things I had on my business card when I was younger and I had my own magic business in high school, right? At first it was what, MG Magic or whatever, or Mike G Magic, and then it was Close Up Close, is nothing is as it seems. Somebody could be the nicest person and portrayed as such, and behind closed doors, they are the worst individual you'll ever meet. Not even lying, because I've experienced it, I've seen it over and over again. So I hope you guys, you know, understood what was going on in this video, because remember, as Thor said in Avengers, right, when he was talking to somebody, he said, on your planet you call it magic, on my planet we call it science, and anything that has not been described or distinguished to you is, or, you know, explained to you, would be indistinguishable from magic, right? And that's physics, right? Sending sound through light, having somebody hear something, etc., playing with audio, so on and so forth, so you could incriminate, blackmail, or falsify evidence. Come on, really? Step up, all right? Stop being a keyboard tough person, right? Because when things hit the ceiling, I guarantee you'll run. A lot of you will. There's only a handful of people that will stay and actually fight and be honest. Anyways, till next time, my friends, I will see you guys in another video of Finding Freedom. Take care. Have a good one. Peace.